On the night of January 29th, 2022, a fierce blizzard swept through Canton, Massachusetts, blanketing the small town south of Boston in heavy snow and plunging temperatures into the single digits. Amid this frozen chaos, a tragedy unfolded that would grip the nation, spark a fervent true crime following, and unravel into one of the most convoluted legal battles in recent memory. John O'Keefe, a 46-year-old Boston police officer, was found dead in a snowbank outside a fellow officer's home at 34 Fairview Road, his body battered by blunt force trauma and chilled by hypothermia. His girlfriend of 2 years, Karen Redd, a 45-year-old financial analyst and adjunct professor, would soon be accused of his murder, setting off a firestorm of media coverage, public protests, and allegations that would fracture trust in local law enforcement. The case, with its tangle of conflicting evidence and whispers of a police cover-up, became a lightning rod for controversy, drawing true crime enthusiasts and armchair detectives from across the country. Welcome to True Crime Vault HQ, where we uncover the truth behind the cases that haunt us. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss a single detail. John O'Keefe was a respected figure in Boston's tight-knit law enforcement community. A 16-year veteran of the Boston Police Department, he was known for his dedication to serving the public, often working long hours in the city's bustling neighborhoods. Beyond his badge, O'Keefe was a devoted guardian to his niece and nephew, having taken them into his home in Canton after their parents' deaths. His modest colonial-style house on Summer Street was a hub for family life, where he balanced his demanding career with coaching youth sports and hosting barbecues. O'Keefe's warm demeanor and athletic build, standing 6 feet 1 inch and weighing 216 pounds, made him a recognizable presence, both on duty and in his community. His relationship with Karen Redd, which began in 2020, was described by friends as passionate but occasionally strained, marked by the ups and downs typical of couples navigating busy lives. Karen Redd, a graduate of Bentley University, was a high-achieving professional with a career in finance and academia. Her poised demeanor and analytical mind contrasted with the chaotic night that would change her life. On January 28, 2022, Reed and O'Keefe embarked on a night of drinking with friends, a common social outing in Canton's close-knit circles. They started at C.F. McCarthy's, a lively local bar where patrons gathered to escape the winter chill. The couple, joined by acquaintances, downed drinks. Reed later estimated to have consumed 9 over the course of the evening, before moving to the Waterfall Bar and Grill, another Canton staple. Laughter and conversation flowed as freely as the alcohol, with O'Keefe and Reed appearing in good spirits, though forensic reports later suggested Reed's blood alcohol level may have reached between 0.14% and 0.28% by midnight. After hours of bar hopping, the group was invited to an after-party at 34 Fairview Road, the home of Brian Albert, a retired Boston police sergeant. It was here, in the early hours of January 29th, that the night took a fatal turn at approximately 6 a.m., emergency responders received a frantic call. Karen Reed, accompanied by 2 friends, Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts, had returned to 34 Fairview Road to find O'Keefe lying unresponsive in a snowbank near the edge of Albert's property. Snow had accumulated heavily overnight, with drifts piling up to a foot in some areas, obscuring much of the scene. O'Keefe's body was found face up, his clothing soaked and frozen, with visible injuries to his head and arms. Blood stained the snow around him, and his right eye was swollen shut, suggesting significant trauma. Emergency medical technicians arrived promptly, battling the storm's aftermath to reach the scene. Despite their efforts, O'Keefe was pronounced dead at Good Samaritan Medical Center in Brockton, his cause of death listed as blunt force trauma to the head with hypothermia as a contributing factor. The Canton police, led by officers familiar with O'Keefe through professional circles, quickly zeroed in on a hit-and-run theory. Reed's black Lexus SUV, parked nearby, became a focal point. Investigators noted damage to her rear right taillight, with small red plastic fragments scattered in the snow near O'Keefe's body. The scene was chaotic, with snow continuing to fall and first responders trampling the area, complicating evidence collection. Reed, visibly distraught and shivering in the frigid dawn, told police she had dropped O'Keefe off at Albert's home shortly after midnight and returned to his house alone, only to grow concerned when he didn't return. Her statements, delivered amid tears and apparent intoxication, raised suspicion among officers, who noted her SUV's proximity and the timing of her return to the scene. The case exploded into public consciousness almost immediately. Local news outlets, including the Boston Globe and WBZ-TV, splashed O'Keefe's death across front pages and evening broadcasts, framing it as a tragic loss. Headlines with sensational descriptors like femme fatale or ice queen, as if Reed's appearance were somehow evidence of guilt, a peculiar obsession that seemed to overshadow the actual facts of the case in those early days. National outlets soon picked up the story, amplifying the drama with breathless reports of a killer girlfriend and a cop's tragic end. The media frenzy set the stage for a polarized public response, with some residents of Canton mourning O'Keefe as a local hero while others began to question the rapid finger-pointing at Red, sowing seeds of doubt that would later sprout into a movement. The town of Canton itself, a quiet suburb of about 24,000 people, was unaccustomed to such scrutiny. Its tree-lined streets and colonial homes, typically serene even in winter, became a backdrop for news vans and true crime enthusiasts, who descended on Fairview Road, snapping photos of the snow-covered lawn where O'Keefe was found. The community's shock was palpable. O'Keefe was a hometown figure, and the idea of a fellow officer's girlfriend as his killer seemed both unthinkable and tantalizingly scandalous. Yet, beneath the surface of the initial narrative, cracks began to form. The discovery of O'Keefe's body in the yard of another officer's home raised eyebrows, particularly among those who knew the tight-knit nature of the Boston police community. Whispers of favoritism and incomplete investigations began to circulate, though these would not fully emerge until later stages of the case. In a darkly humorous twist, early media coverage included an odd fixation on the weather itself, with some reports dramatically describing the blizzard as a killer storm, as if the snow were an accomplice to the crime. This meteorological melodrama only fueled public fascination, with online forums buzzing with theories about what might have happened in the hours between O'Keefe's last sighting at the Waterfall Bar and the grim discovery at dawn. The stage was set for a case that would unravel into a labyrinth of conflicting evidence, legal battles, and public outcry, with Karen Red at the center of a Hawkins and a snowplow driver, whose testimony would later become a pivotal piece of evidence, adding an ironic layer to the narrative by claiming he saw nothing in the yard that night. The morning of January 29, 2022, dawned cold and chaotic in Canton, Massachusetts, as the town grappled with the aftermath of a deadly blizzard and a shocking discovery. John O'Keefe's body, found in a snowbank outside 34 Fairview Road, presented a grim puzzle for the Canton police. The scene was a mess of snow and ice, with drifts piling up to a foot deep in some areas, obscuring potential evidence. O'Keefe's body lay face up near the edge of Brian Albert's property, his navy blue coat and jeans soaked and frozen stiff. His head bore multiple lacerations, and his right arm displayed deep scratches, later described by the medical examiner as gouges. Blood had seeped into the surrounding snow, creating a stark red halo around his head, and his right eye was swollen shut, suggesting a violent impact. The medical examiner's report, finalized days later, confirmed blunt force trauma to the head as the primary cause of death, with hypothermia playing a secondary role due to prolonged exposure to the sub-zero temperatures. Canton police, many of whom knew O'Keefe personally, arrived swiftly, their boots crunching through the snow as they cordoned off the area. The crime scene was compromised by the elements and the flurry of first responders, who inadvertently trampled potential evidence in their haste to reach O'Keefe. A key focus was Karen Reed's black Lexus SUV, parked nearby with a cracked right rear taillight. Small fragments of red plastic, later identified as taillight pieces, were found scattered in the snow within a 10-foot radius of O'Keefe's body, their bright colors standing out against the white landscape. A single hair, later confirmed to be O'Keefe's, was found adhered to the SUV's rear bumper, and traces of his DNA were detected on the broken taillight. These findings pointed directly to Reed's vehicle, fueling the police's early theory that O'Keefe had been struck in a drunken hit-and-run on February 1st, 2022, just 3 days after O'Keefe's death. Karen Reed was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating a vehicle under the influence, and leaving the scene of an accident resulting in death. The prosecution's initial case rested on a straightforward narrative. Reed, intoxicated and angry after a heated argument with O'Keefe, struck him with her SUV while dropping him off at Albert's home around 12:30 a.m., leaving him to die in the snow. Reed, still reeling from the shock of finding her boyfriend's body, told police she had dropped O'Keefe off at 34 Fairview Road shortly after midnight and driven to his Summer Street home, only returning at dawn after growing worried about his absence. Her emotional state, described by officers as hysterical and possibly intoxicated, raised suspicions, as did her SUV's proximity to the scene and the timing of her return. The investigation moved quickly, with police focusing on Reed's vehicle and her actions that night. A forensic scientist from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab conducted a retrograde analysis of Reed's blood alcohol level, estimating it at 0.14% to 0.28% around the time of the incident, well above the legal limit of 0.08%. This bolstered the prosecution's claim that Reed was too impaired to drive safely, having consumed approximately 9 drinks at C.F. McCarthy's and the Waterfall Bar and Grill. The damaged taillight and the fragments found near O'Keefe's body formed the cornerstone of the case, with prosecutors arguing that the debris field of plastic shards in the snow matched the impact point on Reed's SUV, adding a touch of absurdity to the early investigation. A local resident, whose identity remained undisclosed in public records, repeatedly contacted police with conflicting accounts of the night's events. One day, they claimed to have seen a dark SUV speeding away from Fairview Road around 1 a.m. The next, they insisted they'd been asleep and saw nothing, only to later call back with a vague story about hearing a loud argument outside. This individual's eagerness to insert themselves into the case, coupled with their inconsistent stories, became a minor sideshow, with investigators noting their statements were as reliable as a weather forecast in a blizzard. Despite this distraction, the police maintained their focus on Reed, whose arrest marked the beginning of a legal saga that would soon spiral into a national spectacle. As the winter of 2022 progressed, the investigation into John O'Keefe's death took a darker turn, revealing layers of complexity that challenged the initial hit-and-run theory. The Canton police, under pressure to solve the high-profile death of one of their own, began uncovering evidence that suggested the case was far from straightforward. Karen Reed's defense team, led by attorneys David Yannetti and Alan Jackson, seized on inconsistencies, alleging a potential cover-up involving officers present at Brian Albert's home on the night of January 29, 2022. The investigation deepened, exposing troubling details about the conduct of law enforcement and raising questions about the integrity of the evidence. That a pivotal revelation came with the discovery of text messages sent by Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor, the lead investigator. Proctor's texts, sent to colleagues and friends, contained derogatory remarks about Red, including calling her a whack job and other offensive terms, revealing a clear bias against her. These messages, later read aloud in court by Sergeant Yuri Buchanek, suggested that Proctor's objectivity was compromised, fueling the defense's claim that the investigation was tainted by prejudice. The texts also included Proctor's failure to report inappropriate communications, a violation of protocol that led to an internal affairs investigation and his eventual suspension in July 2024. That the defense's cover-up theory centered on the after-party at 34 Fairview Road, hosted by Brian Albert, a retired Boston police sergeant. Witnesses reported that O'Keefe and Reed arrived at the home shortly after midnight, but Reed claimed she dropped O'Keefe off and did not enter, while others stated neither attended the party. The defense argued that O'Keefe was beaten inside Albert's home, possibly attacked by Albert's dog, Chloe, known for aggressive behavior, and left outside to die in the snow. They pointed to the lack of a search of Albert's home, never conducted by police, even after the incident, as evidence of favoritism, noting that the house was sold in spring 2023 potentially eliminating critical evidence. Forensic evidence further complicated the narrative. Independent experts hired by the defense analyzed O'Keefe's injuries, particularly the deep scratches on his right arm, described as gouges in the medical examiner's report. These experts testified that the scratches were inconsistent with a car strike and more likely caused by a dog attack, citing irregular patterns and depth. They also argued that O'Keefe's skull fractures and lack of lower body injuries suggested he was not hit by a vehicle traveling at the 20 to 30 mph alleged by prosecutors. The taillight fragments, a cornerstone of the prosecution's case, were questioned as well, with defense experts suggesting the damage to Reed's SUV could have resulted from a separate collision in Albert's driveway, supported by the absence of significant vehicle impact marks on O'Keefe's body. The timeline of the night also came under scrutiny. A snowplow driver, Brian Loughran, testified that he passed Albert's home multiple times between midnight and 5 a.m., clearing snow, and saw a number 2 16-pound man lying in the yard, casting doubt on the prosecution's claim that O'Keefe was struck around 12:30 a.m. Digital forensic analyst Ian Whiffen examined O'Keefe's cell phone data, revealing that the device arrived at 34 Fairview Road at 12:24 a.m. and remained in the yard all night, raising questions about when and how O'Keefe ended up outside. The defense's theory gained traction online, particularly through the efforts of a local blogger named Aidan Turtleboy Kearney, whose outlandish claims of a sprawling police conspiracy, including planted evidence, captured the attention of thousands, despite their often hyperbolic nature. In a humorous reflection of the public's hunger for intrigue, the investigation's mishandling of evidence added fuel to the defense's fire. A trace analyst from the Massachusetts State Police Crime Lab testified that glass and plastic found near O'Keefe's body and on Reed's SUV were tested, but an SD card in the SUV's infotainment system was overlooked and other modules were damaged during testing, raising concerns about evidence integrity. The humorous irony of a high-profile case hinging on fragments of plastic smaller than a dime was not lost on observers, as the tiny pieces became a focal point of heated debate. These findings shifted the investigation's trajectory, turning public opinion toward Reed and setting the stage for a contentious trial. The first trial of Karen Reed, beginning in April 2024 at Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts, was a media circus that ended in a dramatic mistrial on July 1, 2024. The case's twists, rooted in forensic disputes and allegations of police misconduct, captivated true crime followers and polarized the public. The prosecution, led by Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, argued that Reed, intoxicated and furious after an argument, struck O'Keefe with her Lexus SUV outside 34 Fairview Road around 12:30 a.m. on January 29, 2022, leaving him to die in the snow. The defense countered with a theory of a police cover-up, alleging O'Keefe was beaten at Brian Albert's home, attacked by a dog, and abandoned outside. Supported by independent forensic analyses, the major twist emerged with the revelation of Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor's text messages, which included derogatory and sexist remarks about Reed, such as nutbag. These texts, exposed during the trial, led to Proctor's suspension on July 1, 2024, and his firing in March 2025 after an internal affairs investigation found he violated protocol by failing to report the inappropriate communications. The texts, read in court by Sergeant Yuri Buchanek, suggested bias that undermined the investigation's credibility, bolstering the defense's claim that Reed was framed to protect officers at Albert's party. The defense further argued that the taillight fragments found near O'Keefe's body were planted, noting that Canton police dashcam footage showed no plastic or shoes in the yard during an early search, a detail that sparked heated courtroom debates. Forensic disputes dominated the trial. Defense experts testified that O'Keefe's injuries, including skull fractures and arm scratches, were inconsistent with a vehicle strike at the alleged speed. They argued the scratches resembled dog bites, citing irregular patterns in the known aggression of Albert's dog, Chloe, which was rehomed months after O'Keefe's death. The prosecution's evidence, including O'Keefe's DNA on Reed's taillight and a hair on her bumper, was challenged by defense claims that the SUV's damage could have occurred separately. supported by the lack of lower body injuries on O'Keefe. A digital forensics expert testified that an SD card in Reed's SUV was missed during initial testing, and other modules were damaged, raising questions about evidence handling that. Fueled public skepticism. The trial, spanning over 30 days of testimony and 3 weeks of jury selection, featured dozens of witnesses, including law enforcement, forensic experts, and O'Keefe's family. His mother, Peggy, recounted the devastating moment she learned of her son's death, while his niece, then 14, described Red shaking her awake in a panic, saying O'Keefe hadn't come home, a moment the prosecution later argued showed Reed's awareness of the incident. The defense's case was strengthened by a snowplow driver's testimony that he saw no body in the yard during multiple passes, contradicting the prosecution's timeline. Despite compelling arguments, the jury deadlocked. After 5 days of deliberation, with post-trial accounts revealing a near-unanimous not guilty lean on the murder charge, leading Judge Beverly J. Canton to declare a mistrial. The trial was not without its absurdities, including a spectator's bizarre outburst about an unrelated personal grievance during a witness's testimony, which briefly halted proceedings, and drew chuckles from the gallery, a rare moment of levity in the tense courtroom. The mistrial amplified the case's national attention, with true crime fans and supporters of both sides clashing online and outside the courthouse, their dueling demonstrations forcing an expanded buffer zone. The twists, Proctor's texts, and the forensic inconsistencies cemented the case's reputation as a twisted saga, leaving Canton and the nation divided as the legal battle prepared for a second round. The mistrial on July 1, 2024, marked a turning point in the Karen Reed case, igniting a firestorm of public reaction and unresolved questions. The Free Karen Reed movement surged, with hundreds of supporters gathering outside Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts, wearing pink and waving signs proclaiming her innocence. The movement spread beyond Canton, fueled by true crime enthusiasts and social media campaigns that amplified the defense's claims of a police cover-up. Public trust in the Canton Police and Massachusetts State Police eroded, particularly after the revelation of Trooper Michael Proctor's biased text messages, which led to his firing in March 2025. Supporters celebrated Reed's acquittal on murder and manslaughter charges in her 2025 retrial, but the guilty verdict on operating under the influence, resulting in 1 year of probation, left lingering doubts. The 2025 retrial, which began in April and concluded on June 18, saw Red acquitted of second-degree murder, manslaughter, and leaving the scene of a fatal accident, but convicted of drunken driving. The jury, composed of 7 women and 5 men, deliberated for 5 days, with closing arguments on June 13 revealing starkly different narratives. Prosecutor Hank Brennan expressed disappointment, insisting the evidence pointed solely to Reed, while the defense's forensic experts and timeline disputes swayed the jury. Reed's supporters erupted in cheers outside the courthouse, using American Sign Language, "I love you" gestures, while O'Keefe's family left with bowed heads, decrying the verdict as a miscarriage of justice. The civil wrongful death lawsuit filed by O'Keefe's family against Reed and 2 Canton bars, alleging her intoxication caused the tragedy, remained pending, with Red filing a motion to dismiss on July 9, 2025. The recent developments kept the case in the spotlight. Sergeant Yuri Buchanek, a key investigator, was transferred to another division in July 2025 after failing to report Proctor's inappropriate texts, a move seen by some as a quiet admission of investigative flaws. Boston Police Commissioner Michael Cox denied allegations of pressuring Officer Kelly Dever to alter her testimony about seeing someone near Reed's SUV, calling the claims baseless on July 10, 2025. Unresolved questions persisted. Who was present at Albert's party? Was evidence mishandled or planted? Why was Albert's home never searched, and what became of the dog? The sale of the house and rehoming of Chloe fueled speculation, with some social media theories veering into the absurd, such as claims of extraterrestrial involvement, a humorous reflection of the case's grip on the public imagination. The case's twists, Proctor's texts, forensic disputes, and the lack of a home search continued to haunt Canton, with the Free Karen Reed movement vowing to uncover the truth. As preparations for addressing the civil lawsuit and potential new evidence continued, the saga remained a twisted puzzle, its complexities ensuring it would linger in the public's mind long after the snow of January 2022 had melted.